Welcome to Sera, a podcast hosted by me, Sera and Lalone. Join me as I go straight to the sources of my curiosity. Each episode, I get to discover or rediscover everyday educators as we discuss their passions and their projects. Listen in on our conversation and let our words spark imagination and inspiration. You're listening to episode 84 with Tracey Tinley. Flexible seating is a mindset. Hello, everyone. And I want to say welcome back to the podcast because we are officially launching season 3 of Sera. And today I thought that it would be so lovely to speak with Tracey Tinley, who is an educator from Behaviour, Ontario, just in the Ottawa region, not too far away from me, because you've probably seen her video or some of the pictures of her classroom circulating on the Twitter sphere lately. And there has been so much conversation and hype and excitement and just like admiration for what she has done to her classroom that I needed to hook her onto the podcast and have her come chat about it. So Tracey, how is it going?
It's been a busy week, but it's going really well, and I want to thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah. So for those who don't know you, some things that I seen on your website and online, you are a recipient of the Prime Minister's Award for Teaching of Excellence. Some of your teaching has been recognized in the Ontario College of Teachers publications through like the Great Teaching Series. You are a professor at the University of Ottawa, and you also founded your own brand called Idea Shop. You seem like a pretty adventurous and dynamic and passionate kind of educator.
Yeah, no, there's it does sound like a lot when you read it.
Yeah,
It kind of makes me
I'm
tired.
like, holy moly.
Yeah, it's spread out over many years. But no, there's absolutely. I think my heart is always in the classroom, and I think that sometimes we hear a lot from educators, but I think there's something to be said for when you're actually in the trenches every day. And I do teach at the university, but it's just one day a week, and then 4 days a week I'm with my lovely grade 4s and 5s. So that to me is sort of my shining accomplishment there.
Aw, okay. So tell us a little bit about what your reality in the classroom is this year before we like talk about your actual physical classroom and space and stuff like that.
Sure. So I've been teaching for a little while now. This is, I think, my 22nd year. It feels like 7. I'm not sure where the time has gone.
This is my second year, so you only have 20 years on me. It's not a big deal. It's nothing really at all.
Yeah. So, so this particular year, I'm teaching the English and math programs to 2 separate French immersion classes at our school. One of them is a grade 4. And the other one is a split grade, 4-5, primarily grade 5 students. And that's probably my simplest assignment in a bunch of years, because last year it was 3 grades and it was blending. We're piloting blending English students with immersion. So this year it actually feels like, okay, it's just 2 grades, which is perfect.
There you go. So because I come from the French system, just a quick question. Is your math class, like obviously your English class is in English, but is your math class in English or in French for these immersion students?
Yeah. Our math is in English as well, which is sort of why we're kind of exploring blending with our grade 6s, because French immersion students and English students would have their instruction for those 2 subjects in English. And so we tried last year to kind of mix the 2 streams or the 2 programs together. And it was a really nice partnership, I think, and they're doing it again this year, but I'm not on the grade 6 train this time around.
Cool. So you have started. It's not the first time you taught grade grade 4 or 5?
No,
Okay.
I actually took I taught grade 4 earlier in my career, and I taught it for a good chunk of years, and then thought, wow, like I think I need a break. And then I started to go a little more older, and then didn't think I would want to do grade 4 again. And then a few years ago, I was kind of handed my assignment, and that's my dog. My apologies. Was handed my assignment, and I thought, oh, grade 4, okay. But it was almost like you just needed that little break. And now that I'm back in with that age group, I think at heart I am a grade 4 teacher. Absolutely.
Amazing. I think that's my sweet spot as well, but I have started my career in high school, so who knows if I
Oh,
ever
wow.
get to teach in the elementary system, but who knows? Time will tell. I'm open to everything and anything, so I'm very jealous of you. You're so lucky. And I guess, is this because, like, clearly you've done so many things, you've been in so many different classrooms. I know that you haven't always been like a classroom teacher.
That's right.
But this year you got so lucky, you have your own physical classroom to yourself, right?
I do, and it's kind of rare because usually with the French immersion students, typically their homeroom is the French class. But just the way the timetabling worked, and some staffing situations at our school, it just kind of lucked out that I was their homeroom teacher. So my name is on the classroom, but I do share the room with an immersion teacher who's new to our school, and
Lucky
she's
her.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So the children stay in that room all day, and we as the teachers sort of rotate in and out. So I do teach in another classroom for the other half of the day. And in fact, I actually don't see my homeroom, the room that kind of caused the buzz. I don't actually
Hmm.
teach in that room until the afternoon. So
Okay.
it's sort of split between two locations.
So that has been, you created all of that. Did you, sorry, let's just talk about what your classroom actually looks like for those who haven't
Sure.
necessarily seen the video, because that's one thing with podcasting. There's no visual elements to this. So people have no idea what your classroom looks like, why I have you here. But obviously, to our listeners, this isn't just a normal classroom with rows and desks and chairs, clearly. So I'm not the one that made it. I will let you kind of describe it using all of your senses. I'm also an English teacher, so do like descriptive, not writing, but explanation.
Yeah.
What can you tell us? How can you describe your room?
Well, the edu jargon word for it at the
Yeah.
moment would be called a flexible seating classroom, or sometimes flex seating for short. Essentially, like you said, it's not your traditional learning space. However, we do have a lot of the same things that a traditional classroom does have. We have a carpet area. We do have desks in our classroom, but they're kind of arranged in pods. There's if I counted, I think there's probably only 8 actual school desks in our room. And then the rest of the furniture is sort of an eclectic mix of things
Hmm.
from my basement, all in good working order in case anyone from the board is listening. But things that I've purchased, secondhand, or more kind of living room type furniture. No couches, no upholstery, because that is a fire code violation. But when you walk in, the kind of the vibe I was going for was a kind of a family room slash dining room table slash Starbucks kind of feel. And so I think, it's definitely hit a nerve in a good way with a lot of
Hmm.
people, because it does look very different. I think, quite honestly, what probably caught the attention this year with the video is there was one wall that I had in my room that had seen
Yes.
better days, and it had a huge, ugly computer drop cable running down the middle of it, and then a kind of a bulletin board, because it was where the teacher desk was typically situated. it had this kind of odd looking bulletin board off center of the wall, and the wall had, it had seen some stuff. Let's just put it that way. So I knew it wasn't going to get painted, just because it's not on the high list of priorities. And so what I had found back in May at my local dollar store, Dollarama,
We're not
were
sponsored by
these.
them, but
No,
there's
we're
really good
not.
things there.
I found these. They're vinyl stickers, and they come in the shape of what would look like a large wood plank. And they're repositionable, so you can stick them on and pull them off, and they don't damage the walls, and they're not paper. So again, that's completely up to fire code. But what I did was I bought these packages, and I essentially tiled the wall with these vinyl stickers, so it gives the appearance of this beautiful mixed wood grained wall. And then I soon found out that once you do one wall and you have packages left over, you start to do other things. So there's a couple of sections, and I really do think that was kind of the eye grabber. It really softened the room a lot.
How many dollar stores did you go to? I
I
actually
think I
asked
only went
myself that
to.
question.
Yeah, no, I think honestly, well, this is the funny thing. I was sharing an office with a teacher who's very math minded, and I said to her, I need to figure out, how many of these am I going to need? I can't overbuy because you can't return to the dollar store, and so
Yep.
she had this whole algorithm, and we had
No
figured it out.
way.
And so I bought the packages thinking that each package was assorted wood textures, and they weren't. So what I ended
Okay.
up with was all the packages of the same colored wood, and that's not what
Oh.
I wanted. So I had to go back and rebuy. And that's kind of where the extra packages came from. So it was a happy accident because it ended up giving
Yeah.
me more than I needed. Um, but yeah, no, it was pretty easy to find. I mean, a lot
Okay.
of raised eyebrows, like, why do you need so many of these? But
Hmm.
I sort of was chatting with the clerk, and she was kind of into it too. So,
I was like, do you have any more of these in the back? I need 75 packages. And I don't
yeah,
want to drive across Barhaven to go get more.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So, where did the inspiration of the space come from? You said that you wanted it to become a kind of like a big family room. You had some, I don't want to call them odds and ends, but you had
Hmm.
some inspiration from your basement and things
Yep.
that was already in your classroom. How did like your vision? How did that come about? How did you say,
Sure.
okay, this is what it's going to look like?
Well, it does go back a few years, and I'm not going to give you the 8-year rundown, but
Okay.
essentially, when I was a few years back, I was an instructional coach, and I worked out of our school's curriculum department, and it allowed me to go into a lot of different schools. And it was a great role because prior to that, really the only school I had ever seen was the one school that I had been hired at. And so in this one particular case, I met a woman who's since become a good friend of mine named Natalie, and she was teaching in an alternative program, an alternative school. And I remember going into her room, and she had uh, primarily school furniture, traditional desks, but I remember she had in the center of her room this circular table that she had lowered. She'd basically just had the custodian to lower the legs, and
Hmm.
she had all these little cushions around it. And while it wasn't flexible seating in the sense that the kids kind of freely flowed, they were assigned seats. It was the first time I had ever seen a piece of furniture used as a child's workspace in that way. Not that I hadn't seen round tables before, but typically those are, the guided reading table or the table that the teacher calls you to. I had never actually seen a table like that used as their workspace. And they didn't store things in their desks. So that's kind of where it started. And
Okay.
then the one thing I think that kind of gets lost in the video is that it really has been an evolution.
Oh.
I didn't go from students having their independent desks to what is on Twitter in a year. It actually started pretty slow and gradual. It started much like Natalie's classroom, where I simply, asked the custodian to borrow his Allen key, and I decided that for some desks I would lower. down a little bit so that they could kind of kneel on cushions. And some desks I kept the regular height. We turned our desks so that we didn't store things in them. And that's important, I find, because the second you let kids put things in there, as much as you want to say that the space is flexible, we, humans by very nature, I find, are very territorial.
Yeah.
So just turning the desks so that they couldn't put things in there kind of helped them to see that it wasn't their space, and that
Mm-hmm.
all of the space was shared. So that's sort of where it started. And then things, I thought, okay, well, now I've lowered the desks. Well, what if I had a coffee table? And so out came my old wood coffee table that I had painted that summer. And then I started to think, what if the tables were high? Well, how could I raise a table? And then I discovered that, at Canadian Tire, they sell these things called bed risers that you put under your bed to kind of give you more storage. And
Yes.
so we raised a table, and that meant stools now. So it was just very slow and gradual.
Mm-hmm.
But my first couple of years, it looked very much like traditional class furniture, but just sort of being repurposed in a different way. And then I think ultimately, the next couple of years, I started to more actively seek out, other examples, and I stumbled upon a woman on Twitter. She's an American in North Dakota. She's a primary teacher, and her Twitter handle is Top Dog Teaching. And I think she got married. So it used to be Kayla Delzer, and I think it's Dornfeld now. And she
Okay.
has this space, and it's a huge room. And so it's hard sometimes to get past that, because you look at sometimes people's space and you think, well, my room is so small, I could never do that. And she does have quite a large space, but it was really the first time I had seen a classroom that didn't look like a classroom anymore. It really had kind of made that final leap towards
Mm-hmm.
the living room feel. And then one year I was not a homeroom. I was like the English and math teacher, but my French immersion partner, I kind of approached her, and didn't know her that well at the time, and said, "Hey, like, I've been kind of reading about this, and I'm wondering, what you think." And she was gung ho, and we read a ton of articles and set up our room. And parents came in, and actually it was a parent who said, "It feels like Starbucks in here."
Oh,
And
what a
then I
compliment.
started. Yeah. And then I started paying attention to coffee shops and thinking, well, what is that vibe? Like, what is that kind of mellow feel you get? Obviously, we can't have a Keurig going, and the children can't have caffeine because that's not good for anyone. But like, what do those spaces look like?
Wow. So
So
did you
that's
like
that's
jot
kind of
down
how the.
any when you were in coffee shops? Like, did you jot down things that you noticed while
Oh,
being there?
I was a weirdo. Yeah, no, and I totally
Yeah,
took pictures, and
for
and
sure. I would have too.
even to this even to this day, the teacher I'm speaking about her is Marnie, and I'd find myself in a restaurant, and I'd take a picture. I'm like, Marnie, look at these chairs, and she's like, don't take them. But you
Yes.
find yourself like kind of looking around at your space and sort of seeing it, all the choices that do go into making restaurants and things like that,
Yeah.
give them a certain feel. So yeah, I definitely started to be more aware of that.
I'm all about that vibe, and I think so. Obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, like it's only my second year teaching, but I
Mm-hmm.
am also very lucky to have my own classroom. I had my own classroom last year. I have it this year
Oh
as
wow.
well. So right out of the gates last year, everything that I had in my apartment when I was living in Ottawa for Teachers College essentially decorated my classroom.
Yeah.
So I had everything from IKEA, like it was the IKEA
Yeah.
classroom with Christmas lights. And
Yes. Yeah.
so
Totally.
when my students, and I was the new teacher at the school, and students would walk by and be like, Madame, they would hold out their schedule and be like, is this my class? Like, do you have me as a teacher? Is this going to be my classroom? And they were so disappointed when I had to say like, oh no, you're on the other side, or you're in the other hallway. Like you won't be in my space, but my classroom's open for lunch and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I also got to decorate it, not as, like intensely, but just I found like the lamps. So I don't turn on the lights
Mm-hmm.
in my classroom, and we just
No.
had two little windows, but The lamps were on all the time, Christmas lights. And I made my round. I would unlock my door in the morning, and then I'd plug everything in and flick everything on. And then I'd
Yeah.
be like, okay, put a little jazz, coffee, lo-fi music
Yeah.
on from YouTube, and then we were set for the day. And that was like my routine,
Yeah.
and it still is. So I changed classrooms, but and we have way bigger windows now. We have a lot more natural light, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally get it. And this is kind of the segue into my next question, because if we have, let's say, like newer teachers
Mm-hmm.
listening, or teachers kind of like on a budget, so far the things that you've told me about how you've managed to create this space, it sounds pretty affordable. So
Mm-hmm.
like the dollar store, things that
I
you had at your
mean,
house, and using what
yeah,
you had. So I was just wondering if you had kind of like tips or tricks or things that like really worked well for you, where, kind of like hacks that people can do in their classrooms right now that could be like, oh, hey, this could be really different, or this could be really helpful, or this could be
sure.
flexible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I mentioned right at the beginning is, starting. You don't have to immediately go from traditional desk, especially if you're starting mid-year with kids. They can't. It's hard for them to leave on a Friday and come back on a Monday, and everything has changed. So I mean, starting small, starting by just having an Allen key and lowering. Maybe four, like putting your desks in a pod and lowering four of them and having some cushions. Like that's a pretty easy swap to get started. For me, it was a lot of Kijiji, which again, sometimes if you play the teacher card and you explain that you're wanting it for a classroom, I have had a couple of instances where people have just given it to me. They
Mm.
don't. I mean, at the end of it, a lot of times people are putting things on Kijiji, and at garage sales too. It was a lot of garage sales. A lot of times they just want to get rid of it. And so it's not about the $10. And so if you do mention, listen, I'm a teacher. And I remember one particular pickup, I went to pick up some chairs in a snowstorm. And by the time I got there, I had said to the guy, he said, I can't remember what he said. And I said, oh, it doesn't matter to me if they're scuffed because they're going into my classroom. And he kind of looked at me because, they're not classroom chairs. And I explained, what flex seating was, in 2 minutes or less in a snowstorm on a stranger's driveway.
Yeah.
And he kind of said, oh my goodness, that is totally the classroom I would have needed as a kid. Just take them.
Oh,
So there's a lot of people out there that when they hear what you're trying to do, will support that.
okay.
The little chair, there's in the video, there's this one little wicker chair on my carpet space. It's gorgeous. And that was actually like on somebody's curb that I just spray painted.
Yeah.
So there's some things, I must say garbage days in the summer are quite exciting. Not that I'm in there, crawling
Digging
with the
deep.
raccoons,
Mm-hmm.
but if you see, well, for example, on the weekend, I got a text from a colleague and she said, oh, there's a free wicker chair outside the grocery store
No
in Riverside
way.
South. I
Yes.
couldn't fit it because I had a stroller, but it's there. So of course my son and I were like, get in the car, let's go.
Yeah.
Now, we got there. Unfortunately, it was probably a little too damaged for the room. But when people also know what you're doing, they're kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
they come to you and say, oh, I'm changing my lawn furniture and I've got these cushions and they're still great. Do you want them? So just letting people
Amazing.
know what you're doing sometimes can get you some free stuff. And Facebook
Yeah.
groups. There's a lot of buy nothing groups. A lot of the chair
Very
pads that
trendy.
you see in my video, I just picked up off somebody's porch because they were
Wow.
giving them away. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. You just have to look.
Totally incredible. You said that, and I read this somewhere in your comments on Twitter, but like your library cost more than your room did. Is that true?
Yes. And it's funny because there was a comment, I think I missed it because I think the person deleted it. But a colleague had responded. There was some comment about the fact that there were no books in my room. And I mean, that's kind of the laughing, like that's the comment of the year, because if there's one thing I spend money on, it is books for children to almost excess. gave bags away this fall because they just weren't getting read. And I thought, I put a little message out on Facebook saying, if you're a new teacher, I've got bags of books for you that are good, and come and get them. And so I think sometimes the money thing is tricky because we know as teachers, I have that kind of like devil and angel on my shoulder. And, the one is saying you shouldn't have to spend your own money on children that aren't yours. And the other
Mm-hmm.
one's like, but if it makes my life easier and it's good for kids and I'm just going to do it. And my husband thinks I get it all written off anyway. So, hopefully he won't listen to this podcast. But I think, the books, the funny thing is nobody was questioning the fact that how those books got into my library, because there are certain things that we've come to just accept that teachers will spend their money on.
Okay.
Things like stickers and, all the teachers pay teacher stuff, all
Yeah.
the, Scholars Choice, all of those stores would go out of business if teachers didn't spend personal funds. But it was kind of like when they saw that personal money was being spent on furniture, that was kind of the line. And it was just interesting to me because I know that my book budget is, like you said, double or triple
Mm-hmm.
whatever was the cost of this room. But nobody's
Unreal.
talking about that because it's something we've funded for years, right?
Yeah. So people, like, your video has been viewed over 55,000 times on Twitter,
It's crazy.
and it
Yeah.
certainly has inspired a multitude of people from like around the world. These just aren't Canadian educators. These are
No.
educators from everywhere.
Oh,
Like,
did you see my French? Did you
I
see
don't know
my
if I got
French
that far down in the
conversations?
no.
Oh my goodness. It was Google Translate. I'm sure I
Oh,
sounded like, a hillbilly or
but
something
we're
because I was
Canadians. We
literally
try.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, I was literally, some nice, kind gentleman in France retweeted it. And then a few people kind of chimed in, and the whole conversation was in French. And so I had my son who's in immersion. I'm like, what are they saying? What is, I think I'm getting it, but
Mm-hmm.
what's this one say? And so I did have a couple of back and forths where I was translating the actual responses.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You should have just sent them to me
So
and been like, "Hey, Sarah,
I
is
should have.
this good or bad, or what do I answer to this?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've
So it did make it
inspired
across.
people worldwide. I'm wondering, like, if you inspired people in your school, what are educators in your school saying? They must be freaking out.
Well, the really cool thing is, I'm not the only one at our school that has flexible seating in place. So the teacher that I had originally started the journey with, she has continued, even though we don't teach together anymore. And her teaching partner is also a good friend of mine, and she has set up her room with flex seating. And the really neat thing about both of them is that they're both in portables. And we've kind of had conversations about this because last year I was in a portable, and it was a flex seating environment that I had developed in collaboration with the other teacher in there. And we've all kind of said that if you're in a portable, there's no other way, because if you try to get, their class sizes I think are 28 this year. If you had 28 desks in a portable, it's basically going to be wall to wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so in their room, it's beautiful. I mean, you would walk in there and you wouldn't even know you were in a portable.
Yeah.
And it's cozy for sure, but I just think it's phenomenal. So, there's lots of teachers, like as I've worked with different teachers, it's kind of, I sort of feel bad because I'm like, hey, what about this? And then I leave the next year, but they continue it. There's a couple of grade six teachers in my hall. One is starting new this year, which is kind of awesome. She saw the room and she said, this is this. She said she looked at my room and then she looked at hers, at all the desks, and she just thought, I can't. Like I want the space. I want it to feel like that same feeling when she walked into my room, where you can kind of take a deep breath. So she's trying it this year, and it's kind of exciting to watch somebody at the beginning of the journey, because there's definitely bumps along the way that
Mm.
you have to figure out. But it's definitely spreading for sure.
I think it's as important for us as educators to feel good and like comforted and almost like welcomed into our own space as the students, right?
Oh yeah.
You must go into your classroom in the afternoons and just, well, I don't know what kind of classroom you teach in the morning, but when you get to, your classroom in the afternoon, just a big like, Okay, I'm home almost.
Yeah, no, and even after school, I've had a couple of meetings, like some co-planning meetings, and we'll meet in my room, and you don't feel like you're at school. You
Exactly.
feel, you feel like you're in a library, or you feel like you're at a coffee shop. I do joke that I'm going to slip a cure again at some point, but probably won't.
Okay, Tracey, what I want to do right now, I want to take a little pause
Sure.
because we're going to play a little game. And then after the game, I want to get into the more research based about the benefits of flexible
Sure.
seating and all of that fun stuff. But what I'm trying to do this season is I've brainstormed, and you're my guinea pig on this one, okay? So no pressure. But I've brainstormed
Okay.
some EDU games that I just like in my notes on my phone while I've been like, hanging out here and there during the summer. And the first one is called the association game. It's super simple, I promise. So I'm going to say a
Okay.
word, and all I want you to do is just say the first word that comes to mind. Okay? You just make
Okay.
an association with a word. For example, if I say, well, I'm not even going to give you a practice round. We're just going to go right to it. So
At the end, are you going to like diagnose my personality disorder
no,
or something? Like, is
nothing at
there a...
all. I just want to
Okay.
there's no wrong answers, and the failure is good.
Okay.
You can't fail though. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
just be like quick, try as quickly as you
Okay.
can. So
I'll
I
try.
have
Okay.
10 words, and it's just supposed to be super fun.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Back to school.
Tired.
Students.
Children.
Assessment.
Tricky.
Flexible seating.
Home.
Teachers college.
Oh, that's hard because I'm going there on Tuesday. um, I'm overthinking it. Evolving.
Love it. Assignment.
Paper.
Staff room, break room, whatever you want to call it.
Noisy.
Brain break.
Stretch.
Professional development.
Can it be 2 words?
Yeah.
Need more.
Amazing. And pedagogy.
Experience.
Yes. Sorry, my favorite. So in my head, I was just kind of like picking my favorites. Good job. You did it. Insert clapping noises here.
Thank you.
I love
The
what you
assignment
said for
paper
teachers
was lame.
college. That's
Oh, really?
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Evolving.
What
I
did I
think that's so
say?
important.
Evolving.
Evolving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did it
I
feel to
think
be
it
put on the spot
is.
like that?
It was. I no. It was good. It was interesting. I was surprised sometimes at what came out.
Okay.
Um, but no, that was fun.
Cool. Okay. So, sorry, back to teachers college. Didn't mean to cut you off
Sure.
there. Evolving. I
No,
just want
no.
to know how you feel about that. Tell me more.
Well, I think I think that at least the way I'm approaching it. So this is only my second year that I have taught a course. So 2 years ago, I taught. It's basically an assessment course, and it was second year students. And so I was kind of curious to see what that would be, because when I went to teachers college, it was 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was interested to see how, like, having more time in schools and having more time at the university has shaped teaching. I think the evolving might have been maybe a personal, like, subconscious thing,
Mm-hmm.
because I think the way I'm going into it, the second year, there's an evolution certainly to my thinking. I'm teaching first year students this time around. And so that in itself is a little bit different. They won't have actually been in classrooms yet
Oh,
until after I teach fall semester. And so I don't think their first practicum, I could be wrong, but I don't think it starts till December. So that's different. Whereas the 2 years ago, they had been on at least one full practicum and had already been into their second schools by the time they saw me.
you're
So I think
teaching.
I've had to evolve.
You're teaching how to plan assessment, right?
Well, it's the course. It's PED 3141. So it's curriculum planning and implementation and assessment, but it's split into two parts. So part one is more the lesson planning and design, which is what I'm doing this year with first year. And then there's a second part two, same course, part two, but they focus more on the assessment. And so that's what I did 2 years ago with the second year students.
I
So
think
same course,
your
but
class is
different.
extremely important, especially for students who have
It's
not gone into a placement yet. Oh my
right.
goodness.
It's kind of like how to be
Yes.
a teacher.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah,
And again, no
essentially. And it's
pressure.
no, and it's really stressful to know that you have 12 courses or 12 classes to kind of teach that. So it's the summer was, a lot of really reflection on, what I liked about the first time around and what I needed to change and maybe what I wasn't prepared for. And so it's definitely evolving for me. And I think the university is also evolving too. Um, just in, the way that the types of assignments we're giving students and
Hmm.
things like that.
Oh, that is so good to hear. Well, I'm looking
Hmm.
forward to hearing how that journey is going to go. And if you have first year teachers who are interested in connecting with me to talk about education and be on the podcast, you can definitely send them
Oh,
my way
sure.
because, again, it wasn't too long ago I was in their same kind of position. So just looking to kind of provide them with some professional development that they might not necessarily get in the classroom or in their practicums. So
Yeah, no, that's
there we
a great
go.
idea.
Yeah. Okay. So let's jump back into flexible seating.
Hmm.
I hear, well, not often, but you could sometimes hear people say, Tracey, why would you put time and energy
Hmm.
and money and resources into your space? I have desks, they work great.
Hmm.
What would even be the benefits of flexible seating? It's just a buzzword. Why are people doing it? It's just like a trend. It's
Hmm.
going to end soon. It's just blah blah blah. How can
Hmm.
you counter that? What is that reason behind, what are the benefits that our students are receiving when they walk into classrooms like yours?
So I think classrooms are changing, and we hear that a lot. I think the classrooms that I'm in, you know, today are very different from when I first started teaching. I think there's a lot of demands on classroom teachers. I think there's a lot of students. I think even just things like mental health. There's a lot of things that I've been the last few years dealing with mental health with children that certainly I never had to deal with at the beginning of my career. And again, that could have just been location, but I do, in speaking to other teachers, I do feel like there's a shift. Class sizes are getting bigger for the most part, especially in junior
Hmm.
grades. So to me, the classroom, the flexible seating for me helps me to kind of manage some of that. I think sometimes, like, I don't want to jinx myself, but I have not had a lot of student behavior, like, misbehavior
Yep.
in my classrooms. And I think, sometimes we kind of, our classroom environments can provoke it. I think I just know from myself, when I come home, I have a desk, I'm sitting at it right now, but do I mark at my desk? No. Where am I marking? I'm usually laying on my carpet, or I've got my books spread out all around me. And
Hmm.
so to me, like, when children have the power of choice, it's just sometimes it's those little battles that can build up and lead to bigger blowups. And so the classroom, I find, for a lot of children who might have difficulties, is very calming this way, and kind of gives them a little bit of power that maybe they don't feel at other times of their life, or even during their school day or at home. So to me, that's what it is. It's not about the wood wall. It's not about, whether
Hmm.
you have beanbag chairs or not. It's a mindset as well. And I think, like, the tricky thing is if you just change your furniture, if the only thing you change is lower your desks and swap in, different stools and things, but you don't, but your teaching doesn't change.
Yes.
That's when I found there's a disconnect. And so, I have had people, and I've read blogs. I was doing a little research to see if I could find some other things for you to kind of back it up. And
Mm-hmm.
what seems to me is the people who would say it's a fad, or it doesn't work, or I tried it and it was terrible. Sometimes it's because of that. It's because you changed the furniture, but maybe your style of teaching or the mindset even of your students didn't change as well. So if you're typically a teacher who assigns a lot of independent seat work, and you don't like a lot of chatter, and you really just want the kids to kind of come in and get down to work on their own, you're really setting yourself up for a disaster if the
Yeah.
classroom now is designed to promote conversation and
And
collaboration.
collaboration and flow.
And it's
Yeah. Yeah.
confusing. Yeah, it's confusing to kids. So that's sometimes where things go wrong, where you might have a more traditional style of teaching, and then they try this, and then it doesn't work. But for me, I would never. I don't think I would ever go back to traditional desks. I know I wouldn't, because it's just, there's so many benefits that kids get from this room. Like, for example, I mean, I don't want to say the R word, report cards, but when I sit down to write the learning skills, those learning skills are literally writing themselves thanks to the classroom. There's a
Wow.
lot of, talk out there, and there's reference to the classroom as the third teacher. And I really
Hmm.
do believe that's true. Our classroom is almost a third teacher, because, one of the learning skills, for example, is responsibility. Well, my experience is a lot of times with grade fours, they haven't been given responsibility. We're always kind of like checking up on them, and mom's emailing me and I'm emailing mom, and the kids just sort of like leaning back and watching us go. And how do we expect kids to be responsible if we don't give them responsibility? Well, this classroom, children are responsible for their learning, and there's definitely supports there. But if you make a poor choice and you decide to sit next to your friend and you don't get your work done, there's going to be natural consequences for that. Or other learning skills like organization and independence. You
Wow.
have to be organized. It's gone are the days when you could sit at your desk and have spaghetti and get it all over your desk, because it's your space. If you've
Hmm.
eaten lunch and your crumbs are all over the place, you're going to hear about it because somebody wants to do their math there. So it's almost like the class, there's like that good pressure that we all own the space, and so you don't get to be messy. You don't get to just leave your stuff laying around, because that's not how this classroom works. And so learning skill wise, I mean, self-regulation, initiative, all of them. And if we want to even get into 21st century skills like collaboration and communication, like the classroom is really your ally in this. So to me, that's why it's important.
Tracey, my classroom is like, I would say 20% flexible seating right now. And just speaking to you, and I'm already on the train, but just speaking to you and hearing
Yeah.
this, like, I just want to go and add as much more as I can and like keep redesigning it, like almost with the students to see like, what works for them and what they would be
Yeah.
interested in. Cause that's one thing I was wondering, like, you have obviously been in the elementary system for a while and
Hmm.
like maybe you haven't studied it, but like how students work, what kind of students
Hmm.
there are and what they need. So that was probably really good baggage that you had or background info when you were
Hmm.
designing this space. Where for me, like new in a high school setting, like I'm looking to see, where do they tend to work? How do they tend to work?
Yeah.
Like all of those behaviors. Cause I really, really think that like everything that you were saying, just creating like that community in your classroom, like everyone's responsible for the space. And when you said when somebody wants to do their math there, but there's crumbs, like, oh,
Yeah.
it's just the best to
And
have that
I think
ownership, right? Of their space.
totally. And I think, the flexible seating, it's beyond, I'm just trying to think of the right way to word this. It's beyond decoration, because there's a lot of classrooms, if you go on Instagram, there's a lot of classrooms, typically US classrooms, and they have been Pinterested to the nth degree. I
Mhm.
mean, it's all color coding, and the teacher's lanyard matches the bulletin boards, and
Yep.
to me, that's not that. To me, when I see those spaces, they look beautiful, But to me, that still very much feels like a teacher-directed space. What I'm
Absolutely.
trying to do is create a backdrop that will allow children to be their best selves, to be put in situations where they can make choices. And it's not about, matchy, although I do love a good coordinated pillow set. But it's beyond that. It's beyond all of those other things, which sometimes, quite honestly, can be a visual distraction. And so one of my early posts on Instagram when I was setting up the room was the little saying less is more. And sometimes with this, you do have to be careful that you don't, start turning it into your Barbie dream home, because that's not what it's about. It's
Mhm.
about creating a space that is calming, and the bones are there, but it's not about what's up on the walls necessarily.
Okay, I think I have two more quick questions for you.
Sure.
I'm wondering how, um, let's say you have students that were in a very traditional space in grade 3,
Mm-hmm.
and then in grade
Mm-hmm.
4 they're walking into your classroom on the first day. What
Mm-hmm.
was this first week like for you, and how did you kind of implement or allow them to like learn about the space and how it worked and what your
Sure.
expectations are and all of that?
So, yeah, the first week is exhausting anyway, but the
Yeah.
the first week of a flexible seating classroom, particularly with students who are not used to it,
Yeah.
is exhilarating, but also very, very tiring, because the one thing I've said to people who come to me and say, oh, I'm thinking of flex seating, and I've just been very frank, and I've said, listen, if you think, sometimes people think flexible seating is like laid back, loosey goosey, anything goes. And in fact, there is so much thought and intention that you have to to put into this space, that it would be so much easier if my students did come in and sit at desks. So
Hmm.
it's definitely harder, because there's just things that you don't normally have to think about. Like one of the big things is the organization. Well, if they're not storing materials on their desk, how does that work? So I made the mistake. I read a blog, and it was somebody basically saying, flexible seating is terrible because, it'll slow down all your transitions. That hasn't been my experience, but to me, that's somebody who perhaps didn't have routines in place.
Okay.
So notebooks are stored centrally. And I think I started to even do that even when they had desks, because we all know that bad things can
Hmm.
happen to good notebooks in children's desks. So even then, I was kind of limiting. I mean, I think we got to the point where the only thing they actually had in their desk was their agenda and a pencil case anyway, because it becomes like they can barely keep their room clean, let alone a dark cave that they sit at every day.
Fair
So,
enough.
um,
Yes.
and so
Okay.
the one thing, it's sometimes, I'm not going to lie, there are moments where it is hard, because you want to say, oh, just pull out a pencil, and it's come and get your pencil case. But I think for me, the biggest thing in that flexible seating room that nobody commented on, and maybe we just take for granted, is the carpet. I have
Mm.
never taught a grade that didn't have a carpet area. And I know sometimes the tendency as we get up in the grades is to lose the carpet. And I will tell you that in teaching grade 6 last year, my grade 6s absolutely loved the fact that our carpet was our home base.
Oh.
And there's something very community building there. Now, that bench that's in the video came from our school board surplus depot. That if you saw what color it was when it came, you'd know why it was there. But
Okay.
it's living its best life now with a new a new
Oh.
coat of paint. But that's kind of, for the 6s, they're bigger. We wouldn't all fit on that carpet, and so there was ways to kind of get around that. But um, I think, you just have to be so thoughtful about it. The other thing that my teaching partner and I did when we first rolled this out, Madame Marnie, is she and I, we were smart. And in June, that first class that we had walked through it, because we were literally making stuff up as we went. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. And then in June, we thought, wouldn't it be great if we can have them do an exit survey almost?
Hmm.
And so we gave them all an index card, and we said, okay, tell us what you really liked. Like, what were the advantages of this space? And we also know that, there's going to be things that maybe they weren't thrilled about. And so we called them considerations. And I think that was Marnie's word. And that was really smart because it just changed the conversation a little bit. And so, they came up with things like they liked, the fact that they were in charge of where they wanted to sit. They liked the fact that they could stand up and work if they wanted to or lay down. But then we also started to notice that some of the things that some people said were advantages, some people had as considerations. So the big one was, I get to sit with my friends. So some of them realized, it's a double-edged sword, and with great power comes great responsibility. And if you choose to sit next to your BFF and you don't get any math done, looks like you're having some math homework tonight. So, they did that for us. And then what we've done since then is every new class coming in, we don't do icebreakers. We literally start, they take this past Tuesday, they did a lap of the room and then right to the carpet. And my teaching partner and I went right into the activity, which was we had typed up some of these past common feelings from students, cut them up and gave them out and asked them to sort them. What did they think might be possible advantages of this space, and what did they think might be possible considerations? And it just kind of opened the conversation because sometimes they don't even know what questions they have because I had one little girl cry, was just in a good way, but was just like, it was like her face looked like she had just landed in Disney World. So she was like very overwhelmed by the space. But when we sat down and we talked about it, she was like, it's just so beautiful. And I said, yeah, no, it definitely, looks pretty slick, but let's think about what's this space actually going to mean for us and our learning. And so this activity really helps to kind of shine a light. They're very concerned about their stuff. We all know, thanks, Staples, this is their bread and butter, September. They all come with their 27,000 marker sets and, their 6-inch binders that they don't need. And so we had to have, that conversation of what's going to be something that we can store. And we do have storage in our room. And what are the day-to-day, like sitting with them, each student we sat with and, help them pack basically their carry-on, if you want to think of it that way. What are you putting in the overhead compartment and what's going under the plane? So we sat with them and again, that was a thoughtful process, but a lot of times we all know that the things they come with are distractions. I mean, I remember the year that we started the flexible seating, Marnie and I remember feeling so grateful because that was the year that the hot thing to do was to collect all your broken pencil leads from the year and store them in your desk. What? So we managed to bypass that because they, I know, they're like little squirrels sometimes, but you'll never have another desk clean out. I mean, isn't that reason enough right there?
Lord, things that you don't consider until you have a space like this. No. And you're like, you're almost saving time in a lot of places, right?
Yeah. And so, the ones that, they can just reach into their desk and get their notebook in 5 seconds. And I'm thinking, well, that's not my experience. No. Like my experience is there's always 3 kids who can't find it. You got to walk over there and lo and behold, it turns up. But it's a lot easier for me to say, okay, I pull your notebooks, I stack them on the bench. And I say, go and find your spot to work, come back and pick up your notebook. Like if anything, it's a bit of a body break too. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow. I have like a smile from ear to ear because I want to be in grade 4. I want to be a student in your classroom just for one day.
Careful what you wish for. Yeah, no, it's something I'm definitely, passionate about. I think it's such a good move for kids. It's even for us, I would say the one thing I had in my list here that hasn't come up yet is, and it kind of goes along with that change in mindset. The one thing I did is I lost I got rid of my teacher desk this year.
Okay. Okay.
And I've done that before, but I definitely had a larger space. In the video, you can barely see my teacher desk. It's a little IKEA table from the as-is section.
Okay, I think
it's up by the window bench.
It's super, super
and you
tiny.
may have noticed there's another one by the door, and that's for my French colleague. I just felt like she needed, this was a lot too, that she kind of walked into, and I thought, she deserves to have her own little space as well. She has an office, but in the classroom, she teaches in there half day too. So we do have two kind of little separate ones. But to me, that teacher desk is kind of that authoritarian piece, and it does take up a lot of room. And if you can get rid of it, it does give you a little more space to play with. But I've also seen beautiful flexible seating classrooms and the desk isn't an issue. Like you tuck it up in a corner against a wall. To me, it was just sort of kind of sending the message that, if you're not going to have your own space, I do need one just in terms of like from a practical point of view for forms and my day book and stuff like that. But the kids know that they can sit at my desk. And I know teachers who have teacher desks will let children sit at their desk too. Like it's not that power piece that it used to be, but that took some letting go for sure.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite spot in your classroom?
Yeah, I do. It's the white table. It's called the tech table because we have two high tables. It's the table right next to the wood wall.
Okay. With the
sit
stools?
there and
I
and the
would sit
tree
there
right
too.
beside it. Totally.
Because
Yeah.
I'm watching the video right now. And I was wondering, I'm like, I wonder if
That's where my Chromebook drop is.
Okay. Yep.
That's where the Chromebook drop is too. So if I'm working after school, if I was projecting something or whatnot, that's the space I like. I like a little perch.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like the window bench too. The window bench is definitely, I recognize that not all classrooms have a beautiful window bench. So I'm going to take advantage of it.
Oh, lovely. Okay. To finish off the podcast, I don't even know what time we're at, but this has just been so lovely. I'm not cutting any of it out. I want to end with one of the last games that I have. So it's called, and I might change the names of these games as we go on, but I'm calling it for now Alliteration Station. And I have I have 3 sets of 3 words that are alliterations naturally. And you get to pick which one you want. And you'll have like a minute to explain each word. And some of these words are just like really random and some of them are more deep, but you'll only have a minute to just like explain. You can take 10 seconds for each if you want. It's really up to you. So listen carefully to your choices.
Okay.
So the first one is W. So your 3 words are win, wonder, and worry. The second one is fail, philosophy, and feedback. And the third one is pedagogy, pizza, and positivity.
Okay.
So you can pick your alliteration and then let me know what it is and I can redo the words. I can retell you the words and basically just your own take on what that word, kind of like your personal association to it, what you think about that word, what it means to you, something like that. All right?
Okay, so I'll probably go with W.
Okay, so do you want to start with win, wonder, worry? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so win. I think does it have to be flex seating or can I just talk about education?
Literally education in general. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So for me, the win, the other thing I'm really passionate about in terms of my teaching style is trying to make the classroom less of a competitive sport. Meaning in order for me to win, somebody has to lose. And I think that in addition to the flex seating this week, that's kind of been what I've been trying to get across to students is that we're all in it together. There are no winners or losers. We've done a lot of growth mindset stuff. And that's essentially, to me, when I hear win, I think of that kind of thinking about growth mindset and what does winning actually mean? And are we in a race? Are we in competition with each other? So that's what I would say for win.
Amazing. That was 54 seconds. We're timing you.
Okay. So for wonder, I think every year it's just good to go in and not be sure what's going to happen.
Ooh, I love it.
And I think it's hard for us sometimes, and we try to overthink things and we try to put a lot of things in place. But I think that the wonder is kind of what makes this job as interesting as it is. So that's what I would say for wonder.
22
and
seconds.
Worry. Okay. For worry, I would say I find like I'm a worrier,
Okay. Oh,
100%. And yeah, I have a lot of anxiety about a lot of things. And so to me, what I'm trying to do is, again, going back to mindfulness and sort of be in that moment a little bit more. And realizing that, the things that we often worry about, the behaviors we often worry about, the children we're warned about sometimes in the summer that are coming, I've noticed that, a lot of times our worry is counterproductive, and we worry about things that never happened. My sort of mantra has been a line from a Monty Python skit where it's nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. So if we're constantly in a state of worry, we have a false sense of preparedness.
mm,
But in fact, what we're doing is we're preparing ourselves a lot of times, and forcing ourselves to go through emotions that in the end never really come to fruition. So I think, this year and in previous years, I'm trying to get better at sort of letting go of some of that worry and control.
amen. Wow. I think you're just like preaching to the choir here for me.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Tracey, this has been an amazing and incredible. I'm so proud of this first episode of season 3. I just want to like drive to Barhaven and see your classroom tomorrow morning, but like I have a classroom to be in, so that will
Yes,
not
yes.
happen. But that being said, I just want to thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, for your passion. Good luck this school year. Good luck with
Thanks.
your students at the Faculty of Education at Ottawa U.
Yes. I'm so excited. Yeah, Tuesday gets to be my first day of school again, so
Again,
it's kind of fun.
just living
Yeah.
your best life. Well, so if people
Yep.
are like, they're listening, they want to connect with you, they want to go see the video. I know that you
Mhm.
have like a few platforms. So how can they connect with you?
So on Twitter, my handle or whatever we call it is at Idea Shop PD. So it's all one word, Idea Shop, and then PD for professional development. And it's the same on Instagram.
Uh-huh.
I just started that in the summer. So Instagram I like simply because it's really hard to be articulate in 144 characters. And I'm kind of a talker. So a
Hmm.
lot of times I'll post something on Twitter, and then you'll get the kind of director's cut on Instagram where I have a few more letters to play with. So you can find me there as well. And then, as you mentioned, I do have a website, which is www.ideashoppd as well.com. And yeah, I'm also in the province of Ontario. I'm part of our ETFO Presenters on the Road. So you can actually book me through your union, your local uh, association. So that's a couple of ways to get a hold of me.
Amazing. I like how you keep it simple and it's all the same handle for everything. Same website, same Twitter, Instagram. Love it. Well, I look forward to following the rest of your journey on social media, how your students are learning and growing in your classroom. So, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I know that as educators, our time and energy are our most valuable resources. So, I just want to remind our listeners in this big, beautiful world of education, we give what we can, we do what we can, and for the rest, que sera, sera. Que Sera Sera is a proud member of the Voice Ed Radio Network. Original music, editing, and production of this podcast is done by the talented Mathieu Leroux. Find my podcast on all podcast platforms, including SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and now newly on YouTube. Talk to you soon.